What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Rad Gaming Podcast. I'm Pescador.
And I'm Jemshi. And in this episode of the podcast, we interview General Andrews, who transitioned from the fitness industry into streaming on Twitch. We go into how his positive mental attitude has helped him forge his career on Twitch. We also get into some health tips he has for those who are in the gaming industry and also want to stay fit.
This episode of the Rad Gaming Podcast is sponsored by Cento Fiore. Cento Fiore is a lifestyle fashion brand that seeks beauty in cultural heritage and always strives to offer timeless and elegant style. Visit centofiore.com to join the family. That's CENTO-FIORE.com. And now it's time to put those sweatbands on because we are going to get whipped into shape by General Andrews.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got started on Twitch, and also just kind of the, fitness aspect of that as well.
Okay, absolutely. So I'm obviously General Andrews, and I am the leader of the Dream Stream. My audience is the Dreamers, and what I started out with the thought process of when I joined Twitch versus what it's kind of evolved into now was the ability to be able to take people who are fitness-minded and people who are gamers and stop this polarizing opposites that are, oh, you're a gamer, that means you must not be into fitness. Oh, you're into fitness, you must not be a gamer, and turn their heads and look like, hey, guys, you do both things. Just because you're playing sports games does not mean you're not a gamer. And if you are a gamer and you're wanting to be healthier does not mean you don't want to be into fitness in some kind of way. And so as those talks and discussions blew up over time, I don't have any educational content in the sense of a dedicated segment every single week, every month, or anything like that. But we do go on a lot of tangents, as we were talking about on the side, in regards to health topics. And I'm able to give a lot of very basic information across the board, but when people start to get very precise, that's when it goes more into the DMs, just because everyone is so individualistic when it comes to their overall health. That's the
and what their goals are too. Everyone's got their own
big time
goal: losing weight, gaining muscle, and all that kind of.
So many elements to it where people are like, yeah, I try to slow it down because we can go on to so many different tangents, and it's like, let's work with the part of you that's a sponge right now and not me try to force feed anything else into you, even though you kind of really need to know all of it. But it's a balance and a battle of making sure how to go about the right way. For me, starting on Twitch, I started on March 31st, 2015. I'd actually been kicking back on the idea for probably 8 months or longer on pursuing it. I was getting out of the personal training industry, the fitness field, and all that stuff because I didn't like the way that they had that they would go about business practices. And it was kind of because I'm from California, by San Francisco, and pretty much all the chains are owned by the same 4 different ownership groups. Yeah. And even though they're different, let's say it's 24 Hour Fitness versus another franchise, you start to find out how small those inner workings really are and how they all kind of work together, even though they're all competitive businesses against each other. And so I was turned off to what they wanted to do to create a business. And so I want to get away from that. Again, that's where that fitness element of it comes into streaming. And it took me a while before I pulled the trigger on it. Because I was like, well, are they going to stay around? Are they not? When Amazon bought them, immediately I was like, okay, they're not going anywhere. It's time to do this. I should have jumped on it sooner. I didn't. So there comes March 31st. Back then, I used to be a League of Legends streamer, a chess streamer, and a retro streamer. The only thing I've held on to since then is being a retro streamer. So I mostly stream retro, even though I am a variety streamer. And then I actually mostly do speed running as well. That's what I've really taken any of my competitive ones from League of Legends and chess, dropping those types of communities because they didn't mesh with what the overall inclusive, positivity-oriented dreamer base is like. And with the retro and the speed running, I was able to continue to evolve and push myself from a competitive standpoint as well, even though you're just really running against the clock.
Right, but it's just the entertainment value that you're going for.
I mean, I'm glad it's entertaining. For me, it's a challenge. How I view entertainment is almost anybody can be entertaining to anybody else. It just depends who's perceiving it, who's delivering it, and there's definitely tons of different mediums. Just because my level of entertainment might not be entertaining to somebody else doesn't mean I need to get hung up on that. So when I'm thinking about content, I'm thinking about, first off, am I going to have fun doing it? And if I'm not going to have fun doing it, how much am I going to get paid to do this content because I'm doing it as actual work? So when I go and stream for 6-8 hours, I don't view that as work. But when I have to go and make sure I'm getting out 13 pieces of content a day versus just wanting to put out 1 or 2 because that'd be more natural, that's now work. So that's kind of how I view it.
So you put out so much content is just to promote yourself? Is that what it is? Kind of grow?
A couple of different reasons. One of the reasons is, yes, more content out there total is for exposure for eyes that who knows what time of day someone happens to look at their Instagram, their Twitter, their Discord, Snapchat, YouTube, people who want to read things like blog articles, all different forms, and try to maximize what I feel like I'm good at. I went to school for media studies specialization, so I have a lot of background in writing and editing and things along those lines. Where I was like, that's I'm gonna start doing some more writing because I really like doing that and finding out how certain individuals, they really like that format. As much as I'd like to tune in and watch my show, when my show's not on, instead of going back and watching the VODs or anything like that because they're not live, they rather go and read content that I created. So
I get updates about your life or
updates about my life. Maybe they missed the stream and they didn't want to go back and watch the VOD, but they still kind of wanted to know what happened. Do they miss any key points? Like, was there a new world record? Was there, did they complete that game that they were going for 100% on? Did they actually even do the cosplay that they said that they were going to do? Things along those lines, yeah.
You said world record. Have you broken a few world records?
Yes. Currently, I have 3 world records. They're all in the same game, Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, and they're all co-op runs with my friend Das Postman. And he and I had, on a whim, I'd been getting into speedrunning for a while, and I joked with him, hey, we should start doing some speedrunning co-op. Like, there's not that many people I watch on Twitch. I'm sure there are people out there. It's just where I actually ran into it, where I saw a lot of consistency in co-op speedruns. I can go on speedrun.com and find old co-op archive videos to watch, but where it was a consistency thing. And so I had suggested Contra to him at the time, and we played for a little bit. He's like, no, dude, I am not going to do this game at all. And I was like, all right. So I stopped pushing it. That was more than good enough. He gave it a little attempt for a day, and I was like, that's fine. 3 months later, he was like, you know what? Because he'd still be on my show. He's been on my show probably 100. Yeah, this upcoming Monday will be 160 times he'll have been on my show. Again, just as a guest appearance. And he had suggested to me that, hey, you know what? How about we do Turtles 4, Turtles in Time as a speedrun? And I was just like, you want to do a speedrun? You sure? He's like, yeah, man, that'd be fun. I was like, sure, let's try it. And then as we started playing it, after about 1 or 2 runs in, we're like, oh man, that was awesome. And I was like, let's go look and see what the times are for this type of game. And it's like, wait, we're less than a minute behind world record right now? Like, let's go for it. And so as time went on and we started playing, we got the world record in that category, which at that point in time was normal, because it has 3 different difficulties: easy, normal, and hard. And of course, it's one of those games that the real, complete ending is if you beat it on hard, right?
Yeah.
If you beat on easy or normal, it's like, good job, but this is just training. And it's like, whatever. So as we had done that, we had started like, okay, that was fun. We did for like about 3-4 months. We transitioned into Turtles 3 because that also had co-op capabilities. However, we stopped because people started taking over our world records, and we're like, wait a second, what happened here? And then we had this back and forth for a long time, and because of that back and forth, the Turtles 4 community for speedrunning started to actually blow up a little bit. We were able to get a bunch of different charity events because of
That's
that.
awesome.
And so there's been a lot of fun with the Turtles 4.
Do you get like some kind of did you actually have contact with the other individual that you're kind of fighting back and forth for that spot for?
Oh yeah, we support each other in regards of trying to find different ways to quote unquote break the game more. So when the game originally was at its peak back in 2014 for speedrunning, the world record at that point in time was like 26 minutes for the co-op world record. Nowadays, it's sitting at 20 minutes. The game back then, you would assume you would be two different turtles. Nowadays, about halfway through the game, we're able to glitch in a second Raph. So you're able to actually have two Raphaels on the screen at once, because Raphael in Turtles 4 is the fastest moving and hardest hitting turtle, because there's actually a difference in damage values. So there's a lot of different things that by playing the game as a kid, casually and just trying to beat it, I never knew that there was actually
you wouldn't pick up on that at that age.
Super in depth. It's like this exact attack does this combo does this amount of damage, and this, I was like, it was actually really interesting and really cool. The more and more we play it, to
you got to match up the combos to the enemies too to kind of be efficiently kill them in time.
To do all that efficiency with all that kind of stuff was really, really exciting, because I'm so used to playing other speedrun games. Let's say like a Mega Man 2 or a Mega Man X, where really I'm looking at other people's strategies and then going about and applying that to me, right? This time, we're the ones that are developing the strategies, picking some of the brains of like the single player players and what they were doing, and then routing it, because even though it's the same game, it's actually a totally different run when you're playing one player versus two player, or if you're playing easy, normal, or hard. Each one has different routing because the enemies do different types of attacks. And also as you change the difficulties, some of the difficulties have more enemies compared to less enemies, which then changes all the routing and where you're supposed to be if you want to do it quickly.
So what got you on like retro games? What made you stick with it? I mean, all these new games coming out constantly, and you go the old school. I do enjoy old school games. I don't know if you can see me. I have the
I see some that looks like some Grand Theft Auto back there.
Oh yeah, that's PS2 games. But even above that, I have the original Doom for Super Nintendo and things like that.
I see Super Nintendo and 64 back there.
I absolutely love those game systems, and I used to play them all the time as a kid. But what made you right now go that far back?
So for me, one of my big things I've always had, as when it comes to content consumption personally, has been replayability or rewatchability. So for when I'm let's say I'm grading a movie between an A or a B. Lots of B movies are extremely good movies the first time you watch it through. But for me to go up to an A scale, I should feel like if I watch that movie again, I'm going to be like, this is great again. Oh my God, I got to watch it because it's just as good as the first time. Those types of rewatchability feelings. So for me, when it comes to playing games, like I played Mega Man 11 is a good example. Really enjoy the game. I put it in the top 10 of my Mega Mans. And if you guys know Mega Man has like 40 or 50 titles. If we don't even bring in like the RPG element ones of the franchise. And so I really enjoyed it. But when it comes to, let's say, like speedrunning it, I don't see myself speedrunning it because I don't see the same level of replayability that many times over. And so that's where really it comes into retro, is that the replayability comes obviously from the fact that they made a really good title with the limited amount of resources they had, right? They maximized their capability with the music. They maximized their capability with the layouts on the screen. They really had to come up with innovative ideas to keep you engaged, because most of those games came out when people didn't trust video game companies in the sense of they're not going to survive. They're not going to last. Nowadays, we don't trust video game companies because they're trying to charge you too much for like one piece of content, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, so you want me to spend $120 just to get the first 3 levels of a 15-level game? Okay, I don't see what the point is. So for me, it's just that they had to try so hard. They did, and when they delivered, it was such a refined product. Compared to now, they have so much to choose from.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like they're maximizing the things that really don't matter to a gamer. Like at the end of the day, It's like, okay, that was cool, but what's next? Yay, that was flashy on the screen, but what's next?
Yeah. And even that nostalgia feel too.
Oh man, the nostalgia vibes. I mean, a good example of nostalgia. My drug of choice is nostalgia. I used to, a lot of times, I enjoyed going back to my stomping grounds at San Diego State University for school. And there was nothing else for me to do besides, obviously, I love the sun and being outside, which sounds funny for a gamer. But going and doing those types of things, like just going and walking the campus, nostalgia would hit me, and like that good feeling, that good vibe. Just there was nothing else happening. I was just walking,
just brings you back,
the campus, right? And it bring me back, and therefore with the retro feel, that all comes in together.
Right. I know with those retro games that they've always talked about like creativity in those games, that like you're more creative when you have more limits on what you can do, because when you start bringing boundaries, you know, like you could start like, you know, building around those instead of when you've got like an open-ended thing, you're like, which way do I go? And you kind of don't really have a direction to take your game.
I'm sure you've seen them with certain games where you're like, this game was so close to being like the game, but then they just tangented off somewhere that was like, wait, what? No, why
yeah, come back. Like you were.
Yeah, you almost had it. You almost had me. And so that's where I feel, as good as it is that, you know, they have these capabilities with the games, I feel that's where it's hurting them the most. They don't know where the hell to go with it. So like, where do I complete this project when I have 10,000 different options? And that's
when do you know it's complete, right?
Correct.
Because I think most of the time, like levels were, the amount of levels was just like, okay, we have only so much memory to work with.
Yes, correct.
And that was how they made the level count, and that's usually why it was only so many. And now it's like they have games that are just endless.
Well, and I also, with that same exact thing that you just said, is their music, right? They would create their music. Like, you know, they would have someone who is not a musician create music what was limited. Now, the majority of the time, they are paying outside, you know, not that those people don't make great music, but it was already a song for something else. And then they're bringing that and applying it to the game. And sometimes that works, but it doesn't have the same as the consistency as you would see on a lot of other titles. Like, I don't know how often I could start a 30-second intro of a song from, like, let's say, like Chrono Trigger or a Final Fantasy title, and immediately people are like, oh my God, what is that song again? Oh, I love that. You know, all these kind of vibes come out there, you know, versus let's say you're listening to another song on, let's say you're playing, what was it? NFL 2K, and you've got Good Charlotte coming on or whatever. And people are like, oh yeah, I remember that song.
Yeah.
Like, can you speed past that real quick? You know,
right. It doesn't like relate to the game. I think that's also true, is that a lot of the songs aren't as memorable.
Right.
As like, you kind of think, when you think of like good songs in video games, you always think back. You're never thinking like, oh, this current game has some really great music. Like, yeah, you kind of notice it, but there's nothing about it. Like,
there was one newer game though, for sure, that I absolutely love, and it shakes me to the core still hearing it. It is the original Halo. Like you know, that whole thing. Like, oh my God, if you hear that, you know what it is. But
if you can resonate with it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go back to even to the original, like Super Mario Brothers, you know, the song, dun, 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 you know right then and there, you're like, oh man, that's Mario right there. You know, there's nothing like it, and it's just such a fantastic feeling you get from it.
And so that plays a lot into it as well. And so things that I've done with my stream has revolved a lot around nostalgia too. So like, let's say certain alerts that I have go off come from like I don't know about you guys, but for me, being 33, almost 34 years old, being a 90s kid growing up, that lots of different shows we'd watch after school or, you know, Saturday mornings. So, you know,
what are you working with? What song? What noise?
We've got, you know, your intro to Gummy Bears. We have your, you know, intro to DuckTales. We've got Darkwing Duck. We've got a Goofy movie in there, and Powerline's dancing. We've got He-Man is in there. That's a little bit older.
He-Man, oh my goodness.
But, what else do we've got in there? We've got Gargoyles, Tailspin. I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on and you know, when someone hears that, they're like, oh my God, I forgot about that thing. And the good vibes come out, and people start talking to each other. And someone who might have had a bad day originally when coming in is now feeling better because there's similar people that are sharing in the good vibes, not trying to one up each other, just enjoying what is going on in the moment.
So now that you're doing, you know, retro games and focusing more on that kind of community, do you find that it's more older individuals that join your community as opposed to younger generation? Because, you know, I grew up in the 90s, so I would be more driven towards you, yes. But what, you know, do you interact with a lot of young kids that come in and actually like are enjoyed? Really?
I have a mixture and it depends. So I do have an older crowd compared to a lot of other individuals that I watch as well, because obviously my crowd will relate to the games because they were playing them, or maybe they were 30 something and those games came out. Right. I mean, because I'll have people who are in their 40s or 50s and be like, oh, man, I remember that one. Jesus. And also what I found out, too, is because of, even though I have my stuff labeled as mature content, because there are times, where I'll curse and whatnot, let's say I made a mistake in a game, what's funny is I'll hear a lot of individuals say that they watch my show with their children. I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm mature content. What do you do? You're brave,
Yeah.
But like, come to find out, compared to the majority of others, my mature content is tame. In that
right,
same
it's not the
light.
main feature, or
yes, it's not the main feature to be risque or shock value type of stuff. Yeah. And so with that, I've got them watching with their children who are anywhere between 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 and whatnot. And then I have, because of my want to interact with a lot of different other content creators and our love for each other's content, they might have a younger audience that'll come on in and they'll be like, wait a second, so that's where this game came from. And they might be referencing Mario Odyssey. They might be referencing Mario Galaxy from the Wii, not realizing where these other games
so they pull things that they know, like new word things, and they're like, oh, so that's where they got it. They went back to the original Mario. I got it. Okay.
Right. It's kind of interesting to think that, like, some people, their first Mario game was Mario Galaxy, right?
Yeah, right. Like, that's mind-boggling to me, because to me, it was such a trip to, sometimes you're using the controller, but you're also using the nunchuck to control, if you're on like the moving platforms and stuff, and how much more there was to it. And yet, even though there was more to it, how the game was still an easier game to play. Right? Yeah. So we're adding like multiple elements of different controllers that you're holding at once, instead of just one good old brick controller that you can play with, right? That the game was still overall easier than your old school games that were really content-wise. If you speed run it, you're done in like 20 or 30 minutes. But you had 30, 40, 60 hours worth of content, because the level designs and the creativity in those level designs made it difficult because you didn't know how to adjust to the physics at that point in time.
So let's kind of discuss the fact that you have all these retro games at your disposal. Did you purchase all of these over time? Did you purchase them like really far back in the past, and you just kind of saved and held on to them and then started replaying them?
Well, when it comes to retro games, it depends which retro games we're talking about. Some of them I have to emulate because there's no way to find them anymore. Nintendo does not plan on reproducing them so I'm mostly a Nintendo boy as growing up, because my mom was a Nintendo gamer, and so whatever she had was that was at our disposal. So things like Sega, I only was able to play like the Genesis and whatnot because of friends. And at the same time, there's only a couple of games that are really like endearing to me because I didn't grow up with it, right? But I was like, I still want to play that game. And so things like Sega Genesis, I've accrued over time. I've yet to play anything on stream in regards to Sega Genesis, but I do plan to do so. Other ones, I've now done a full conversion of my setup to be able to do original hardware. But for the longest time, from a streaming aspect, doing original hardware, if you're just starting out, actually sounds like a pain in the ass unless you do know all this technical stuff. For me, thankfully I am a talker, and this stuff right here, this is me. This comes to me naturally. All this other stuff, I had to learn at a painstakingly slow pace compared to other people. Like, oh my God, what's taking you so long, General? It's not that hard. I'm like, but I don't get it. It says red and it's still not working. And so when it came to original hardware, I've now finally got things set up. It's still not quite perfect to what I want. Original hardware is most important, especially on a speedrunning scale, because the games actually... So how the speedrunning community treats it is that there are different emulators that are okay to play with, and there's other ones that aren't. And the reason why is they don't want you to have an advantage on your system. Right?
Yeah.
So
right, load times.
If you're playing a Nintendo versus somebody else with a Nintendo, Nintendos are always going to be the same. There's not a way for you to tweak it to actually make it beneficial for it to go faster. It's just not going to work that way. It's scaled a very specific way to work a very specific way because they only had one type of television that they were working with. right? And so when it comes to emulation, there's different emulators that run faster. Why? Because the game they can do that. However, those are not legal emulators for speedrunning. So you play the ones that are legal. Well, guess what? That means they are a little bit slower. And once you start to push time and you actually get close to those times where, running 1 second faster does change, 4 or 5 positions in the standings because it's all that close. You're like, wow, I really do need to consider this nowadays. And so that's where I've been bringing back a lot of my games that I did have, but going through storage, trying to find stuff like, where did this game go? Why was this moved? What the heck happened, And so I've been pulling a lot of stuff back. I remember as a kid selling a bunch of games so I could get my Dreamcast. And let me tell you, over the last couple of months, I've been kicking myself just remembering that. I'm like, why'd I do that?
Yeah.
It's a horrible deal.
I've done that
what
too.
A horrible deal. They took advantage of me. I was a kid. How dare they?
Yeah, you probably got like $30-$50 or something.
Oh
for
man, I think I traded in like 15 games and still had to pay $50 for the Dreamcast, which was
wow.
Controller, And this is back in what 99? Is that when it came out? I want to say it was right around there, 99, maybe 2000, when Dreamcast came out, and that was a deal that Toys R Us had. Bring in X amount of games, and it's only going to cost you $50 for everything. You're going to get the system, a controller, and like one game, something like that, right? And it was like, oh, $50, that's a great deal then if I do this. Try to find all the games I thought wasn't going to play anymore. Come to find out, who knew I would want to play them some more, Shoot.
I honestly didn't think I'd play with my stuff. I just literally, this just been the last month or two that I went back to my parents' house. They're actually moving. I moved to a different state than them.
Okay.
They decided to follow me down here, and it wasn't until just the last couple of months I was like, I had a Super Nintendo. I had an N64. Yeah. Where the heck did it go?
Where'd it go? What'd you do?
So I went back and visited them, and I spent a whole day looking through my parents' attic because they're older, so they decided to keep quite a bit of things. So I had to dig through a ton of things to find it, but I finally found them.
Opposite of my parents, they throw everything away.
Oh, man.
They throw everything away, right?
But no, I ended up finding it, digging it out, and honestly, I was sweating bullets because I was trying to plug the Super Nintendo into one of my old TVs, and it wasn't turning on. I'm like,
oh no,
oh god, it's not working. So like the old school, I'm blowing inside the blowing on the cartridge and just shoving it back inside, and in the back there's a switch that goes either channel 4 or channel 3, and I didn't know it was switched to 4, and I was on 3 the entire time. So I'm like, oh, I hope this works. And I flipped it. I'm like, yes, it works. I was so excited. I had no idea. Wow, but it was awesome. Such an awesome feeling to finally get to play those old school games again. But what you said earlier that you were into fitness and you were a fitness. Yes. It says that you're a health and fitness professional. Can you talk to us about how you got into that? What made you decide to do that?
So for me, like I was telling you guys, I went to school actually for media studies. The reason I changed my degree slightly. It was journalism was the main reason I went off to college, because I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I had stepped away from playing sports, realizing the effort I was putting into in a sport that I was undersized in. I was big into basketball, and being a 6'3" power forward or center going into any higher level was not going to be the case, right? When you've got 6'3" guards, 6'3"
Sure.
for the position I was playing. I was in high school and all that kind of stuff was fine, but once you start going up into the bigger and higher degrees of play, I was completely outmatched or whatever.
You're just average.
Average at best, because their ball handling skills were also 10 times better than mine was, and they're playing a position that they're already 4, 5, 6 inches taller, 20 to 40 pounds bigger. Just people, awesome athletes playing simple. So the reality sets in, right? And I'm a very optimistic person when it comes to almost anything. And I was like, hey, no, this is the reality. Let's take this and let's turn on it. Let's still be involved in sports. You know what? I have no problem talking about sports. Shoot, I have no problem about talking in general. So let's go for this. So journalism came into play. I started doing things like working for the newspaper and covering high school sports. And yet when I went off to school, there was these very specific tests that they had for journalism that caused me to change gears. And that's where media studies came in. Well, while I was going for that, the reason I'm going this whole spiel is, well, I'm doing that, and then I was doing a seminar that I was an attendee for. And so I was able to, it was one that, like, technically I shouldn't have been there, but my teacher was able to basically get me an invite and lied and said I was somebody else and was able to get me into this place thing, right? Like, I'm not supposed to technically be there, but, like, it was such a good experience for me to talk to these individuals and, like, get their headspace on why they went about what they did. And this one guy who did not originally go into broadcasting, that eventually added broadcasting to his career, worked on NBC as a producer and things along those lines, did a bunch of different reality TV shows where he was the producer of the show, not someone that was on it. And I started picking his brain the most out of all the people that were there. And, you know, one of the things I realized is I don't want to move around anywhere to pursue that career of sports broadcasting. When that reality hit me, I was like, oh shit, what the hell am I going to do then? Like, you can't just sit around and do nothing. Like, what are you going to do? And I was big time into fitness, because already from being, you know, an athlete and whatnot. And I was like, you know what? Like, and then my dad's like, you're not changing your degree now. Like, I'm not paying for that. I was like, okay, well, let me see if any of these units transfer over. And, like, Nick said none of them transfer over, you know, because they're totally different things. You know, you got an arts degree versus a science degree. I was like, oh, shit. And so then I started talking to my friend who did go to, he's my workout partner and everything, and he was there for kinesiology, and started picking his brain. He's like, no, man, just study the stuff, get the certifications, and that's all that really matters. He's like, this other stuff is just if you want to work more on the medical side of things in the future. And I was like, oh, okay, well, right on. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Let's do fitness, man. And so I got my degree, or my certification, in NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and then started to branch out from there and started going and learning these different things. That type of stuff got me into the sense of understanding how to sell myself, because, again, I can read this information just like any of you out there can, and you can learn fitness and health stuff, and okay, cool, and you can apply it to yourself and learn, you know, as you test those things in yourself, what's good for you, what's bad for you. So what the hell does it matter that another human being is going to tell you what to do? Well, you start to find out that individuals have all sorts of different reasons why they do or don't do things, especially in regards to fitness. And that's where I came into play, was helping individuals find reasons to do it, because we can find tons of reasons not to do it. Like, right today, I had to tell myself, like, okay, I got all these different things to do. Am I going to actually get a workout in today or not? And then just going through those different ways and helping people get through that, because I know if I go through that, I can only imagine those who struggle to work out go through it 10 times more.
I struggle to work out, I'm not going to lie. I did it Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday came around, and I was a little sore, and I'm like, I'm going to skip today. And I did, and I worked out yesterday, but it's the point. I struggle with motivation a lot of the time. How does that help me out with that? Like, what do you tell your clients?
So every person's motivation is different, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on what a person is working out for, right? Like myself, I work out in a bodybuilding fashion, even though I don't intend on doing any bodybuilding shows or doing anything that's very specific to that type of training. I'm not doing it more than for myself, or maybe I look pretty on camera for a couple of minutes, right? That.
I mean, you got a Twitch, so you got to stream for us.
Yeah, you know, I stream on Twitch, so I guess I look okay for a little bit. But my motivation comes from the fact of proving points to myself. I have a persistence inside me where, especially one of my favorite things is, and which is funny because a content creator that I love absorbing his information of is Gary V, or Gary Vaynerchuk, very motivational speaking individual, and he's not very much pro fitness in the sense of this. He talks about a lot, but he does, you know, say every now and then, like, hey, no, you got to do it, guys. So his angle isn't from that, but his angle's from, he loves it when people come at him and tell him he can't do something. I'm in the same light. Someone's going to tell me I can't do something. Well, now I'm going to prove you wrong because you just said I can't do it, right? So a lot of times when it comes to fitness stuff, I have a very similar approach to it, because there's times where even I told myself I couldn't do it because I'm too, I can never gain weight, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's a bunch of individuals who feel the same way. Maybe it's they can never lose weight, or maybe they're like me, they can never gain weight. All of it is possible. Everyone's got differing restrictions, but anything and everything in the fitness realm is possible, depending on what your expectation or understanding of what possible means. And so when someone's like, I can't gain weight, I'm like, don't worry. I know exactly how that was. I remember always being 160 to 170 pounds at 6'3" in high school, no matter what I did. Problem was I did not understand nutrients or time a day of nutrient delivery, or what does my sleep, what kind of role does my sleep actually play in recovery? What does my type of training do to my type of results? And so people will train in a fashion that they enjoy working out in, but it's not going to be in a fashion that's going to give them the results that they want to see. And so a lot of people's motivation comes from what they see. You would think that'd be only a male-centric thing, because most males are stimulated from sight, right? Like when they see something visual, aha! Well, that's not going to be the same thing for the majority of women out there. That's not their stimulus is not what they're seeing, right? And so, yet when it comes to fitness, majority of the time it comes from what we see. What do we want to see in front of the mirror, or when we take a photo? Did that look good when I go and look at it later? No, it didn't. God, I suck. We beat ourselves up all the time. We do it too often, and realistically, the number one thing that holds people back from their motivation, from getting the look that they want, or if they were on a really good track, is our amount of stress that we put on ourselves. Our self-stress is terrible. It is so bad, and I do it from time to time too, but thankfully, I will catch myself and pull myself up out of that just often enough. And I'm constantly working on that. So I know if I'm constantly working on that, and I spew positivity all the time, that other individuals need to know that they're in that same place. We all are in that same place, and that we got to keep on working through that, because most of people's fat is coming from a lot of cortisol, and cortisol is stress fat, which means that we're stressing ourselves out, and it's not coming from anything else besides us stressing ourselves out. And that might be how you take on stresses. That might be how, let's say, how you respond to a boss talking down to you. A lot of people will be like, that'll happen. They'll hit their shoulders, roll off, and no big deal. Other people internalize it, take it home with them. They have to tell their family about it. They have
that's me. That is me to the definition, man. So,
but and that's you, and there's nothing wrong with that. What you would do then is find what balances it out. And when you find what that balancing factor is, that makes your motivation that much easier to obtain, because you understand yourself better. So self-awareness is the most important thing for someone looking for motivation.
Right. And I know that, I guess for me, because I've kind of gotten into fitness, I had kind of that, like 2 years ago, I think I just graduated, was working a job, and then I weighed myself one day, and I was like, where did these 25 pounds come from?
Oh, no. You're like,
right.
No!
And I think I learned that a lot of times, they say motivation is really what gets you started, but not a lot of times, motivation is temporary, right? I think, do you kind of encourage that they need to get in a routine? That's one thing that I found that helps me, is that if I'm always going, the gym at the same time every day, it really helps me.
I do my best to avoid telling anyone exactly what to do. Because if I'm telling you exactly what to do, I know that works for me 100% of the time, because I know me. So if I was able to control everyone's eating and workout habits, you guys would be great. You guys would be set. But I don't get to control that. I don't get to have that every second of every single day, making you go do this first, making sure you wake up and eat right away instead of going and doing 100 different things and coming back and finally getting breakfast 2.5 hours later. Right? I would be like, no, I'm mad at you right now. Don't do that. But I don't have that kind of control. So what I try and work with for anybody is finding out what keeps them wanting to be consistent. Right? So you are correct. You are 100% correct in what you're saying in the regimen and the consistency. What I then do is try to find out what makes that person want to do that. What makes that person want to apply something that is obviously not what they were already doing naturally. Right. And so Sometimes maybe that's comparing it to something, right? Make an analogy between, well, why would you stay scheduled with your children? Why would you stay scheduled with your work? Why would you stay scheduled with your sleeping? And yet, when you really think about it, the only thing you're missing there from survival is eating. Why would that now not fall into play with your everything else that you have scheduled? Well, eating's the variety spice of life, right? So I just got to go and do like whoa. This sounds like this is a deeper issue here than really I can help you with, because honestly, if you're putting food on a pedestal that is to a degree where you feel you have to defend it, when all I'm doing is trying to help you go with what you already asked me with, there's something deeper going on there. And I can't necessarily help you without you starting to go and find out what those issues are. And so for a lot of individuals, that's why I talked about self-awareness when I was just asked earlier, like what's going to help with motivation overall. But self-awareness is the biggest thing, because when you know really why you want to do something, maybe it's because you're doing it for a girl. Maybe it's because you knew you had a photo shoot coming up because there is this maybe this is a podcast award show you're going to go on to, right? And you're like, holy crap.
God, I hope so.
We're going to be in front of 10,000 people there, and then they're going to broadcast out to like hundreds of thousands of people. Dude, I cannot have my neck look funny today, man. Like,
I can't look like I've been sitting inside all day.
Yeah,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, so you start thinking about these things, and it's a little bit different than normal, even though it's a part of your job as is. And you're like, okay, so what am I going to do to this? So you got to find out what your motivating factors are for why you want the change. And you got to be real with yourself. Because if you're not real with yourself, everything's temporary. Just like playing a game. You can keep on blaming the game for you dying, but later or not, you're going to realize, dude, I just suck. Like, I need to practice. Like, I literally need to practice these inputs, or I'm not going to be any good at this game. And that's what it comes down to a lot of time, is just being self-aware. So, like, you'll even hear me when I'm speedrunning. I'm like, God damn it, game. And then I'm like, no, that was really me. Never mind. Don't worry, guys. I'll get better at this game. And that's just what happens over time, is that you just realize, like, majority of the time, the reason we feel a certain way or we do a certain thing is because we decided to do that. And it's like, dang, that was me. Yeah, I know.
I have a terrible time with trying to figure out. I know that diet is a part of, losing weight. Obviously, working out and diet kind of go hand in hand in a sense. You have to have a good diet, and also you have to work out. But what, in your opinion, there's so many diets out there. I was on the keto diet for a while. And in my opinion, I can see it being bad over the long run. I mean, they have you eating a lot of fats, high amounts of fats constantly to kind of get you into the state of ketosis, and then you burn that fat off. There's paleo diet. I mean, there's stuff that, keto monitors carbs, paleo kind of just anything that's not processed is a good thing. There's things that really pay attention to calories. What, in your opinion, is a great thing for weight loss? Or is there not a good answer for that? Is it just depending on the person?
All right. I'm so glad you asked this question. Okay, so
oh boy.
Number one thing I try to help people understand when it comes to eating or it comes to applying anything fitness oriented is, first off, always look at what someone's trying to sell you. Why do you got new information on something else that came to you? Right? Was it a friend that just gave you, an article? Okay, cool. Right on. Did you get it in an email? Did you find it on some blast on Instagram or on Twitter? Start to realize where this information is coming from. More than likely, someone is selling you something. That doesn't mean it's not real. That does not mean it's not real information. But first, understand the platform of which and why it's presented to you. Once you do that, then you can start to peel back some of the onion layers, right? And be like, okay, so what is this and what's that? So I firmly believe in eating ketogenically. I do not eat keto in regards to the preciseness of how much fat, percentage of fat that your overall macro content comes from. So macro, for those of you out there that don't know, is your protein, your carbohydrates, and your fats. All right. And so you break things down into those three different categories, and that's really that's all your macronutrients are. So keto or ketosis has to do with a certain regard to how much you're doing towards your fat. And so for those eating keto, you would be at a 70% or slightly higher than that threshold, and then have 50 or less grams of carbohydrates in a day. Okay, so now this is where a lot of people get lost in the thought of ketosis and eating keto, why it's good, why it's bad long term. to be honest with you, it's extremely good long-term if used correctly. Any of these ways of eating are extremely bad for you if you know what the heck you're doing with it.
That's
right.
true.
So let's say you put yourself in a state of ketosis and then you immediately pull it out because you want to drink. And you want to drink beer, which is extremely high
carbs. Yep.
Nothing is wrong with it, but we have to understand the science that's going on inside of us when we do that. So when we eat a very specific way, like I like to, I have now cultivated my stomach, the cultures and ecosystem that's in that. Each one of us has a very specific one that's based on how we eat. And that's why I complain about people who always say they had to have a variety of life and they don't understand why their stomach's upset. And I'm like, because it's adapting. Your stomach's constantly adapting to what you're throwing into it. So if you eat a very specific way, it's going to be used to that, and it's going to break it down pretty much consistently. And it's not going to be that big an issue. When you throw something new in there, it's going to be kind of upset because it doesn't know where to take this or throws one way or another. So what happens to a lot of people, you hear about the keto flu is if you decide to go on the catatonic way of eating. Well, the reason there's a keto flu is your body's not producing enough lipids so you can break down the fats. If you can't break down the fats, you're going to feel very sick because you're trying to pass something that you're not breaking down. So it's thicker, it's heavier, it's there's more there going on than it should be because a lot should be distributed out throughout the body because it's taking those nutrients and using them. Well, if it can't break it down to a molecular level that it can utilize it, it's like, dude, we can't keep this here for very long. So it starts pushing it through and people get sick because of that. And usually anywhere from a week to 2 weeks is the typical when adjusting. Well, you know how you avoid that? You do an even slower taper. Guess what, though? Slower results. I can't do that, man. So there's quite a few different ways that, you can work with things here. A lot of people want results quickly, and that's the
downfall.
Biggest problem. It's the biggest problem because it's the human body. The human body, what it does so well is adapt. Adaptation does not happen fast. They might talk about in the workplace, you need to adapt quickly or you're going to fail here, son. And it's like, what the hell's wrong with you?
We've all heard that before.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many times any desk job that I had in the day, I was like, you're going to do it. I'm like, yeah, whatever, get out of here. Make me push your papers. Is that nice and neat, sir? Does that look good? And so when it comes to eating along those lines, no matter, this is the most important thing anybody needs to do out there if you just want to be healthy. If that's gain weight, if that's lose weight, if that's just maintain, is you have to have the right nutrients every day. What does that mean? That means you're paying attention to your vitamin levels and your mineral levels. Those things affect your hormones. And your hormones are going to dictate the majority of what's going on. If you're going to gain muscle mass, if you're going to gain fat, lose fat, all those kinds of things come into play. So when we are offered these diets, what those are trying to do is they're trying to force you into a very specific spot so you're going to obtain these types of things. So what I like the most, and the reason why I do like those who eat keto, especially if they're doing it the right way, not those, hey, I can have French fries because they got no carbs in them, right? Like, no, dude, like, bro, like, doesn't make sense.
Right?
It's fried. There's nothing in it now. It's completely, I'm like, no, because it's bad. It's fried. There's nothing in it. It's toxic food. That when we're doing that is people eat a very specific way, not realizing, even though they're eating this very specific way, they're missing out on their vitamin A. They're missing out on their vitamin C. They're not getting enough magnesium. But this said this. I'm like, bro, I don't care what it said. We got to go back to just the simple science of things. Your body needs 3,500 milligrams of potassium a day. Why are you not getting that? Well, I don't know. And so a lot of these things come into play where it's like what matters most is getting your nutrients. Then after that, once you know you're getting your nutrients, maybe that's all of it's through Whole Foods, right on. I mean, that means you're super dedicated to your way of eating because that's really hard to do, getting everything through Whole Foods. If you're trying to be a content creator or have any type of normal lifestyle, thankfully the content creation, I cook the majority of my food, and I still don't get every single nutrient from my food. I have to do supplementation. So that might be in a pill form for like a vitamin C or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Or like right now, the sun is so inconsistent. I'm in California, right? And the sun is being extremely inconsistent this time of year. I still need vitamin D. How the hell?
Look at Jemshi right there. He needs some vitamin D.
We need a better filter for him. He'll be okay.
Yeah, we'll get him. It's good.
And so I'll take vitamin D3, which is a supplement version of vitamin D. So even though I'm not getting the sun right now, I still need those nutrients. My body's not gonna be like, well, okay, we understand it's winter, bro. It's totally cool. No, your body doesn't do that. It goes and throws you into the freaking fire, and it makes you feel like crap. You're like, I hate myself, man. And it's like it goes through all these different things because it's not getting what it needs. And so a lot of those signals going off are really warning signals that it's not telling you it's a warning. It's just it's making you feel like, why do I feel agitated? Why do I feel sad? I'm a firm believer in eating keto, and here's the reason why really I am a firm believer in eating keto is because the emphasis, if you were really going about it, not fat loss, not weight gain, none of those things, but bringing down the inflammation in your body. So certain types of foods that you'll eat will bring down inflammation on the inside, the actual body composition, right? Then there's also certain types of foods that you'll eat that'll bring down inflammation in your brain. So now for those of us that are content creators, I know I use my camera a lot. I use these screens for the computer. All these lights are set up, and I'm sure you guys do as well. So we're absorbing a lot through our eyes constantly, and this is overstimulation. The fact that we've even been on this call for this long, even though we're all used to it by now, we've already overstimulated what we're supposed to take in for the day from a blue light spectrum.
Right, I think they've got blue light filters and stuff like that. That's what I have on my
all those things. I even have. Where are they? I should be wearing them, but sadly they don't fit as well as I want them to. So I have every excuse to not wear them half the time. That I have ones as well for the same idea to not being absorbing as much blue light, but bringing down the inflammation, because inflammation, which if you remember guys referenced earlier when in regards to stress is the number one killer of people's hopes and people's dreams and people's body composition, right? So if we got stress in there, what does stress do though? Why am I referencing stress again? Remember the inflammation? Well, by stressing yourself out and adding cortisol into your system, it's going to happen anyways, right? By you waking up every morning, there's a little bit of cortisol that goes off because that helps you wake up. That's okay. That's normal. It's supposed to happen that way. But when you're having so much cortisol, you're like, dude, I'm eating well, I'm working out well, but I still got love handles, man. What the hell's going on here? A lot of that comes from stress weight. Well, stress is not good for us. Where does stress come from? A lot of the time it's inflammation. So if we can combat inflammation, you'd be surprised how much weight you actually do lose because it's inflammation weight. And so different foods provide different inflammation reduction in the brain, different inflammation reduction throughout the body. So how do you do that, though? A lot of the things are healthy fats. Well, if you're going to eat a lot of healthy fats, you're probably going to be closer on the keto-like way of eating. So am I eating keto? Technically, no. That's why I refer to it as eating ketogenically, because I have about 60% of my intake is in fat, when technically 70% would be your threshold. So that's where some of that comes into play.
Makes perfect sense. I suffer from a lack of sleep, and I'm sure a lot of gamers do as well. I do not get my 8 hours. Sometimes I don't even get 6 hours, and that happens a lot. I mean, probably a good majority of the week, I get probably less than 6 hours. What does the lack of sleep do for you in weight loss?
So lack of sleep, here's... A lot of people assume when they're sleeping, that's when they're recovering, right? That's when my body is healing and it's doing all these awesome things. Sorry, it doesn't actually work that way. It just sounds really nice. When we're sleeping, what's happening is we're not putting on further energy expenditure, right? And so that's why you hear this reference to, hey, you should be getting at least 6 hours of sleep, up to 8 hours of sleep, and all this kind of stuff, right? This whole balancing of that, because really, all you're really doing with sleep is turning the brain off for a little bit in time where you're not constantly thinking. Because I know for me, I'm an insomniac in the sense that if I get that second wind at night, man, I'm ready to work on 10,000 projects that you can't get me to work on in the morning. You think, hey, you woke up early today? Let's get started on this stuff. I'm like, hell no, man, it's too early, bro. I can't do that. It's like 4 a.m. I should have been asleep 3 hours ago. Dude, I'm going to figure out this Rubik's Cube blindfolded. Man, this is awesome. And so what a lot of it comes down to is understanding ourselves to be able to apply these things consistently. And I've just noticed that for myself, it's constantly going through the cycles over and over again in my head to be able to make it easier. So if I was to find a way to put myself out there, I'm going to find another way to do it again and again. So when I'm being an insomniac, that I will stay up too late, and therefore what I sacrifice now is my social time. if I'm going to go ahead and get this balance of sleep, I'm going to sacrifice my social time, which I do. Dude, you never hang out with us anymore, man. I'm like, yeah, bro, I need some sleep, dude. I'm working hard, okay? Calm down, all right? Like, bro, you never hang out anymore, man. I'm like, dude, is that all you ever want to do is hang out, bro? Because, like, I thought we could at least talk on the phone for a little bit. That's kind of chill, right? And so, again, when it comes to sleep, what all you're doing is you're stopping yourself from expending more energy. And when you stop yourself from expending more energy, now you have an opportunity to heal. What do you actually recover from, though, is by eating. That's why the emphasis on eating comes into play so often, is by you eating correctly, those nutrients are what's going to help you go through your body's process of helping itself heal. Sleeping just turns off the motor, right? Yeah. Like if we kept your car running all week long, right? And maybe let's say you had enough gas that you could do that. Kept your car running all week long. You go out there and you can always jump into and take off to go to, you run your errands. You come back home and you just leave it running, though. No one's going to steal it. That's not the world we live in, okay? No one's going to steal it. It's good. You're going to notice that your car is going to, over time, it's not going to work as well as long because it never turned off. It was never, ever, 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 ever turned off because certain parts of it start to expand from the heat. Right now, we know certain things turning on and turning off is bad for, like, let's say you keep on turning your lights on and off, on and off, on and off. You're going to burn out through it faster than if you just left it on. Different things have different applications. And so when it comes to our body, going to sleep, it is very important, but not to the sense of where you necessarily need to worry about exactly how many minutes you sleep. It's the balance of, does your sleep provide you enough downtime to take on all the energy expenditure that you are doing? So if you think 5.5 hours consistently has you in a good place to get everything done so your stress levels are down because you're being very productive, and yet you're getting enough sleep to where you feel like you're at least rested enough to take on the next day's worth of energy expenditure, go for it. But if you are finding yourself constantly thinking about sleep and wanting more sleep, your balance is not quite there then. Because you're thinking about it a lot more than you should be, right? Sleep should be, it happens, when you do, you have it scheduled, you go into it and you sleep right on. So those are the things, like when I talk to you guys, like when you guys say early, what time zone are you in? Where are you located? Because early for me is a whole nother ball game. And so those types of things matter, so that way you can make sure you're in the best position to be the best person that you want to be.
So you're telling me you have like a consistent like sleep like routine, like schedule, I guess? Like, do you go to bed at the same time every night, or try to?
I used to be extremely, like when I was working for a startup company called Got It, I was their technology director. Well, what did we do? I'm not a technology guy in that sense. You're like, why would you be technology director? Because what I did was I was out there leading different groups on how to teach elderly individuals how to utilize technology. So what was the most important thing that we were working with?
Phones.
For them, that is a technology they don't understand. It's not natural to them. But guess what? They just got this birthday gift from their family, who they rarely get to see, and they gifted them a phone. Hundreds of dollars, this great gift. General, I don't know how to use this thing. That's okay. That's what those classes were for, right? And so for that, they would have early classes for them. A 10 a.m. class for them was like super late in the afternoon. You know what I mean? 10 a.m. for me is super early in the morning, right? But I would be going to bed at 1, getting up at 8:30 every single day. Boom, boom. It'd always be like clockwork all the time. Now with content creation and being my own boss, I don't know how often I'm pinging myself. What the hell are you doing, dude? Like, if you don't get the job done, nobody else is going to get the job done. Get out there, man. Go out there and work some more. And I'm just like, no, I need some more sleep. So it's not as regimented as I would like. I would say roughly, though, I sleep from 5 a.m. until noon is my consistency.
Oh, wow.
That would be my consistency.
That's a big shift, I guess.
Yeah, it's quite a big shift. A lot of it came from the schedule that I used to have when streaming versus the schedule that I now have for streaming. And then just, as you guys know, once you're done with, let's say, like a project like this, there was already stuff you had to do beforehand, so pre-production. Then there's the content, and then there's post-production, right? Well, right. You might have had let's say it was a stream. It was a wonderful stream. That was great. You went over by an hour or two. Everyone loved it. Well, you're still not done, even though you went over an hour or two. You still have all your other stuff you have to do. I got to go get that done. Because if I don't do it, there's something about getting it done the same day as you roll into the next day, even though it's still an hour, let's say, worth of work. You don't want to do it to the same degree the next day as you getting it done the first day. And that connection that you had with the material at that point in time was so much greater, right? Versus going to bed, it's a whole new day. I got a whole new list of things I got to take on. And again, that's me. And so I make sure to balance it out. I'm self-aware enough to know that's me. I make sure to do it so I can get that piece of content out. Otherwise, I'm like, you know what? That was yesterday. It's over, man. It was a good time, right? And so I know that about me. I make sure to put that on the back burner because that's the kind of stuff I have to work with, because otherwise I'll stress myself out. I'm sure there's times you guys find yourselves in situations like, why did I stress myself out about that? I don't know why I did that to myself. That was silly.
Oh,
all the time. Yep.
Do it, and we just got to remind ourselves, okay, I know I do that. Both of you guys just made you do that. And, we just recently got to know each other. So it's just like, okay, you know what? It's normal. And just, we got to keep on remembering that and then keep on progressing forward and forward and forward every single time.
I struggle with burning myself out when putting out content, though. I'm not going to lie. I know you're supposed to constantly, not promote, but interact on social media and even sometimes put out your content. But yes. I find myself struggling day in and day out because you do, your grind. Let's just call it a grind because it's basically what it is. And you put your content out. You might interact with 20, 30 people in a day. Go back, edit some things, do some things. Maybe you're streaming. You still have to keep it going after the streaming is done, like you said.
Right.
But then I go to sleep and I wake up. I'm like, damn, I have to do that all over again. How do you keep yourself so motivated to do it though? Like I just get burnt out, and then when I get burnt out, I'm like, oh, I'm not doing it today. I know it comes down to motivation, man, but is there some technique to keep me going, man?
From my perspective, of course, I can't speak for you specifically, but from my perspective, I've always, if I'm going to do something now, here's the big difference between wanting to go ahead and do this content creation versus, let's say, when I was working for the fitness industry. I'll just use that as a quick parallel. So both things I'm extremely dedicated to. One I'm still doing today. The other I don't do anymore, in the sense of I'm working at a gym and then personally training people. No, I don't do that anymore. I was very passionate about it then. I took it on full bore. I would be the guy that would be in there both at the morning primetime hours and then also in the evening primetime hours, getting both the main sect of it. And then I'd still have clients in the middle of the day if there was clients available for those times. Always trying to be the number one seller, always trying to be the number one re-signer of my clients. That's where I always found the most, it's always easy to sell someone the very first time. I always felt that a true sign of quality work was being able to have someone come back again because they really want to learn at a deeper level again. They really want to not just get past this starter pack. They actually want to change their life. Because am I going to change my life in 30 days? I'm like, no, you're not. What? I'm like, well, I mean, are you going to go at this full bore? Like, maybe if you go at this 100%, we might have a chance of changing your life in 30 days, but we're going to need longer than that. I'm not going to lie to you. Well, I don't know if I want to do this now. I'm like, well, then don't waste your money. Like, honestly, for me, you're wasting my time and you're wasting your money if you feel like that already. So, okay, so when I could bring that into play, okay, so that's that. The reason why for me I'm motivated about this is I'm doing this for me. When I was doing that, it wasn't just for me. In the very beginning, it was. And that's why I had so much passion and so much energy. And therefore, I was able to make a long-lasting impact with my clients at those points in time, because I was passionate. I was into it. As time went on, and I wanted to progress into the management side of things, because I felt, hey, if I feel so good about what I can do for myself, what about if I'm managing 5 of me, 10 of me, or even if they don't start out with the same type of mindset or skill set, they can become that way. I'll be patient. I'll teach them, and they'll learn. Oh, man, we'll have an army. We'll have an army of generals, and we'll just go and take on everyone who needs to change their life. Let's do this thing. And then, the guy that owns the place is like, slow down there, Shunny. You don't need to be doing that right now, okay? What I need you to do right now is sell more. I'm like, but dude, I am the number one seller. I've been the number one seller for the last year and a half. What are you talking about? Good job, but we need more. We need more money right now. What the hell are you talking about more money right now? We're the number one selling. What are you talking about? I really just don't see this going much further unless you could sell more right now. And so that starts to burn you out, right? When you're the number one seller for a long period of time and they're telling you it's still not good enough, when you deep down know it is good enough, like they're just taking advantage of you, motivation gone. Okay, I was number one at that point in time back then. Right on, cool, good job, General. Good for you, pat on your back, yay. So cool with all that kind of stuff. But it's very demotivating because they decided to take away what was already intrinsically happening, which is being good at my job, right? Instead of finding other ways to motivate me to be even better or to bring other elements into it, they kept on bringing up the one thing I was already doing well because they thought they could manipulate me into more money. So like I was joking about myself, pinging myself is because I'm my own boss now, right? Yes, I'm the full-time streamer and all that stuff. It's not the glamorous, drinking champagne off of, upside down models while I'm driving in my Benz, backwards, right? It doesn't work out that way.
Not yet, right?
I don't drink alcohol first off, but I'm not really that big into cars. So either one of those doesn't really work for me. But point being, though, a lot of people think, the glamorous lifestyle, being an entrepreneur and being a full-time streamer, really all that means is that all my focus is in this overall content creation basket. And you're like, oh, that's easy. You're not working on the job and balance those other things out there. It's got its own differences, right? Like my income is all solely, related to the content creation and the generosity of others, or, the sponsorships and things like that you can garner through this type of stuff versus, you have a steady paycheck coming in. My motivation lies in my passion for it. Right. Like, that's why I say, like earlier when I was telling you, I was like, I can't tell you what yours is because I can't speak to what your passion is in what you do. My passion is in doing this kind of stuff. Like, why would I get up early for me to go ahead and come on a podcast like this when I could easily sleep in? I could tell you, hey, you just texted me saying, hey, are your shoes still coming? No, man, forget that. I'm out of here, right? I could have done that. I could have been an asshole like that and just leave you guys in the lurch, But my passion is in doing this kind of stuff. So guess what? I'm up early. For me, I'm up early from what I'm used to getting up at because I enjoy this kind of stuff, right? Now, let's say I had to get up early, and it could have been even, let's say I got to sleep in a half an hour long, but you wanted me to go stand in line at the DMV. That was going to be my job for the day, was to go stand in line at the DMV.
That's a terrible job.
Terrible, right? Terrible. I would have got a half hour more sleep, but it'd be a terrible job. And so these types of factors come into play where it all comes down to your passion. Are you doing what you want because it makes you happy? And if it does, you can pshaw a lot of things. Like when people are like, dude, how much? It's so funny. What do my friends, quote unquote, IRL that I knew before streaming, ask me about my job the most? How much money do you make? And I personally, to me, it's extremely annoying because I really don't care how much money that you're making, in the sense of I would be proud for you making a lot of money, but that's not the first topic of choice I want when I'm learning about your job. I would like to know, hey, who did you interview today? Right? Or is there been any people that you've interviewed recently that you felt like, man, that was a really good guest we had on there? Or, like what complications do you have while trying to run a podcast? Do you find editing easier, or do you find dealing with the live individual a lot easier, right? Those are the kind of questions I would ask you about your day, about your job. Not, hey guys, how much money did you make off of that one appearance from that one person?
Right. You're just kind of quantifying all the work that they put down into a paycheck.
Into a paycheck, because so many people are used to their W-2 style of living, of comparing, well, this is what I have, I'm going to spend it and do this thing. And so, like, a lot of times, it's so funny, is that, so I'm very supportive on social media in the sense of, Instagrams and Twitter. So we're talking about the engagement, right? Where there's a lot of, comments here and there. And I'll make sure to like a lot of things, again, because the algorithm currently for a lot of things is if you're liking stuff, you're not choosing to force, like a retweet. You're choosing to force feed on your individual feed a piece of content, right? That might be somebody's going live post. That might be some grand event they had, maybe some sponsorship thing, whatever. You're choosing to force feed that piece of content. When you click like, that's up to Twitter's algorithm now to decide, do they want to display that on somebody else's because you liked and they followed you, right? So you do that and whatnot. And when doing those types of things, I'm trying to support different individuals so that they can get more exposure and all that kind of stuff. for myself personally, though, I'm doing that because I wanted to be involved in their type of work. They then want to be involved with my type of work. And the more and more that we're doing that, we are exposing each other's communities to this type of content. I live for doing that kind of stuff, right? Now, I don't remember for you guys if you worked in any other type of jobs where you had to do cold calls.
No.
Okay.
I can only imagine how tough that is.
I'm very happy that you don't have to deal with that.
I've heard so many stories.
Yeah, horror
it's the same
stories.
thing like when you get a telemarketer calling you. The only difference is with telemarketers is that there was no reason for them to ever have called you besides them getting your information. Compared to the cold calls that I had, they had filled out something that says you're going to receive a phone call if you fill this out because you want to have a free 1-month gym membership, right? So therefore, I would call because guess what? Do you want this free 30-day gym membership or not? And then from there, from them getting to try it out, now you would go and try and sell them after the fact, but you were actually offering something that they filled out ahead of time. So you deal with that. Oh man, you get some weird phone calls and stuff when that happens, right? It's like I didn't give you this information. I'm like, well, how the hell did I get it? Like, I don't know. I don't even know who you are. Like, I'm hoping this is the real person, you know?
Is your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife set you up for?
And you start to get to some of those points where you start finding out they start using other people's phone numbers, you know? So you start calling. It really isn't the person who wanted it, and their dog's barking at them while they're on the phone. You're like, okay, you know, ma'am, it's okay. We'll talk another day. Have a good one. You know, you hang up and you move on. But when managing all the different types of social medias and putting out all the different kinds of content is realizing where does that come into play in what you want to be doing every day. I want to be involved in that manner. Like you were talking about, I get burnt out, right? And I do too. And so like this last Tuesday or Wednesday was my version of a radio silence where really all I was doing was liking or commenting on stuff. I didn't produce anything on Wednesday that was, you know, my content, right? And so when I didn't produce anything that was my content, you know, it feels like I was letting myself down, right? Because I didn't create anything for that day. But it's the same thing as knowing what's your limit on when you're starting to burn out versus when you're passionate and happy about doing what you want to do and just not beating yourself up over it, right? Like have that day to yourself, whatever that means to you, you know, just have that day. And therefore the very next day, hopefully you wake up and you're ready and motivated to go. Like I could have pushed myself too hard on Wednesday trying to create content. Thursday rolls around. I got my stuff I have to get done that day. This morning could have come around and I could have felt exhausted to the point where I might've wanted to cancel. But I knew ahead of time to myself, I'm like, why would you want to do that? This is going to be a new piece of content that you don't normally produce. Why would you want to put yourself in that light? It's like, nope, I need to take the day off. And that happens once in a while. Those types of motivational things that you're asking about, it's just knowing yourself again, right back to self-awareness.
Yeah, knowing your limits.
Know yourself, you're able to pull back on that.
Yeah. I guess the last piece of, or last question I should ask you is, what's one piece of advice you'd give to aspiring streamers? Maybe the ones that are trying to do this full time.
The number one piece of advice I would give to aspiring streamers, and you guys probably have heard it for this can probably be the 25th time I said this, self-awareness. There's a reason why I preach this, because with self-awareness, there's going to be self-accountability. And accountability is, to me, it's a very honorable thing for an individual to be able to bestow upon themselves, is understanding what they do to themselves and what they do to others by being themselves. Now, you want to hope it's always in a positive light or a positive manner that they're doing these kinds of things. But there's times where you start to see that people are self-sabotaging of their, of their image, of their career, because I'm just being real. No, you're just being a real asshole. And again, people are allowed to have their thoughts and their opinions and everything out there. Like people say freedom of speech all the time. Okay. I'd love to just go on this tangent for just a second.
By all means.
You guys know what freedom of speech actually stands for, right?
I feel like this is a trick question, so I'm going to pass on this.
Okay, he's going to pass on it. No problem. I'll let you guys pass. I don't want to put you too much on the spot. Okay, so freedom of speech, really what it comes down to is freedom of oppression from the government, right? So as long as you're not a government entity telling somebody not to do said thing, therefore you're not actually infringing on their freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So let's say you see a terrible comment in your comment threads or whatever that has nothing to do with your content. Not that they're calling your content trash, whatever. That's an opinion. You can leave it there. You cannot. That's your space. But now someone comes in there with something very, very, very negative on either you're racist, you're homophobic, or any of those types of lines of thought process. You're deleting that, and you're even blocking that said person because they're not trying to bring anything good to the table.
Yeah.
They're just trying to be very, trigger oriented. And so that person might say, well, you're infringing my freedom of speech. That has nothing to do with this. Just like in my chat channel, I will make sure I'm always positive oriented. People can talk about their problems to a certain degree. We're not therapists. This is a place of happy. We want to forget about some of those issues because there's other times that we're going to deal with it. But for tonight, we're going to play Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and we're going to have a good old time doing that. And you know what? Let's get some positive vibes around the chat. So now somebody else might feel the need to keep on going on their tangent of negativity, right?
Yeah.
That's being purged. That's being stopped. They might feel I just infringed on their freedom of speech. They didn't have to choose to be there. I'm not a government entity, so I am protecting myself and my freedom of speech within my channel. And so again, self-awareness, self-accountability, to put yourself in a situation to know why are you doing what you're doing, the results that you're getting for why you're doing them. And then with those results, are you going to actually view them in a light that you're going to be able to have both a devil's advocate standpoint, but also enough self-confidence to continue to produce said content? And with those types of things, you'll be very successful on, let alone this platform, be it if it was on a podcast or stream medium, but really any platform, is that you have to have a heavy balance of the two of them. And that really comes down to accountability and self-awareness.
It's a great way to put it, man. I've never heard that yet, and that really strikes home. That's a really good piece of advice. But we want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate your time. I really do.
Well, and I appreciate you guys having me here. Like, gosh, I feel like I was just talking the whole time, and like you guys were just...
but no, I mean, we were really interested in what you had to say. You had a lot of good information.
That's one thing I can do. I can talk a lot. I don't know about if you guys want the information or not, but that's one thing I can guarantee you. I will continue to talk for a long period of time.
Absolutely fine, my man.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
And thanks again to General Andrews for coming on the podcast. You can catch him on Twitch at twitch.tv/General Andrews.
And make sure you stay tuned for our next episode of the podcast. We release a new episode every Wednesday and Friday. And as always, stay rad, comrades.